Okay, everybody, welcome to the Google for Education Next Practice webinar. Hopefully you can all see us. We are very, very happy to be here and to share an hour or so with you to talk about education technology and how we can make the learning experience even better for our kids. If you do have questions, you'll notice that in the top right-hand corner of this video, you'll have a Q&A button, which you can click on, and you can ask questions via the Q&A app. My name is Chris Harte, and I am a French teacher and a leading teacher at John Monash Science School. I'm also one of the Google certified teachers on our panel tonight, of which we have a few, and I am very, very privileged to be the host of tonight's discussion. So I look forward to hearing some wonderful things from our presenters, who I am just going to let them introduce themselves just for a few seconds before we do the introduction to the rest of the webinar. So can I pass over to Chris Mann?
G'day everyone, a pleasure to be on board tonight. I'm a geography, English and environmental science teacher at the John Monash Science School. I'm happy to be helping out tonight and hopefully give you some good tips and ideas to use Google Apps for education.
Awesome, thanks Chris. And if we go over to Steve Mouldey, who is in Auckland, New Zealand.
Yeah, kia ora all, just to prove that it's not all Australian educators on here tonight. I'm at Hobsonville Point Secondary School in Auckland, and I'm a social sciences teacher. I would say geography, but at the moment we've only got 2 year levels. We're only junior because we first started last year. We're building our way on up, so mainly social sciences at the moment.
Awesome, thanks Steve. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, my partner in many crimes, Kimberly Hall.
Hello everyone, I'm Kimberly Hall. I am a Google certified teacher and a Google education trainer. I currently work for Catholic Education Melbourne, and I also do a whole lot of work with EdTech team to put together the GAFE summits, which many of you have no doubt attended, and hopefully will continue to come to more.
Awesome, thanks Kimberly. Okay guys, so I'm going to get my presenters to mute, which would be brilliant, and I'm going to share my screen. We do have a slide deck which we'll put into a link into the event page, so you'll be able to catch up on that. This slide deck is just going to start giving us a kind of context, and if I can just get there and find my slides. Is that okay, presenters? Can we all see that?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks, Kimberly. So the learning outcomes today, what we want you to take away from the session is the knowledge you'll develop, we hope, will be around the SAMR model to an extent, and we will be critiquing, if you like, the SAMR model, looking at it certainly as one way of looking at education technology, but not necessarily the only and not necessarily the best way. But more important than all of that, really, is the numerous examples of GAFE next practice we will share with you today. So really looking at what people are doing, what great educators like Steve, Kimberly, and Chris are doing in their classrooms and with the people, the organizations they work with day in, day out. But the mindset we want you to have and to develop during this presentation is a real growth mindset, you know, being open to new ideas, connecting what we talk about with what you already know, and most importantly, being evaluative, because I can guarantee you that everything we say tonight will be like 100% amazing for us in our context, in our schools, in our organizations. These are the things that work really well for us, but you need to be evaluative. You need to decide what will work for you, what's going to help your educational technology use move forward, and you know, ultimately help the students that you teach and who learn with you. The skills we're going to use, particularly the presenters, but you guys as well, we're going to be collaborating, hopefully showing you a bit of creativity and communication, a little bit about planning and critiquing as well. And the tool sets, we've actually got a plethora of tools to show to you tonight and to share with you tonight, from Google Sheets through to Google Forms, Google Docs, Google Slides, Chrome, Hangouts, and the list goes on. So let's just move very, very briefly, because I don't want to take much time tonight. I want to give the maximum time to our presenters to talk a tiny bit about what is next practice. So we can have technology and we can have poor pedagogy. We can invest millions and millions of dollars or pounds or whatever into technology, but if we have a poor pedagogy, we'll end up with a butter stick. It sounds like it's a good idea. We've got the technology to make it happen, but really, is it making our lives or the lives of our learners any better? Some people might argue it is. I would argue maybe that's a little bit of a crazy use of technology. Sometimes we have some great ideas. We have really strong pedagogy. We know what we want to achieve, and we have poor technology. And that leads to real frustration on the behalf of the teachers, but also the learners. But a lot of the time is we have no technology, and we have strong pedagogy, and that leads to great learning. This picture is a picture I took of some of my students doing some work in using hexagonal linking and post-it notes in French. And that, for me, there was no technology there apart from paper and post-it notes, and the depth of learning in that lesson was immense. But we are here to talk about technology and the next practice around technology. So if we have great tech and we have strong pedagogy, is that going to equal greater learning? So we're going to kind of explore that space a little bit this evening with you guys. So just to briefly look at the SAMR model, the SAMR model is a way of looking at technology and its application, particularly to tasks which are chosen by a teacher. So you might have a task, for example, which is simply a note-taking task. Now, kids could equally take those notes on a piece of paper with a pencil, or you could substitute in a word processor and they could type it onto a computer. So that, in that sense, we're using technology to substitute a task without actually changing the task in any way. So the learning outcome for the kids remain the same. It's really just the mode that changes. And then SAMR talks about, well, there is a level which it says is above, in a sense, if we look at this as a hierarchy. I would argue, and there's definitely lots of people out there who would argue, that this is not necessarily a hierarchy. It's just a different way of looking at the way we can use technology and learning in different ways. But within this model, anyway, the next kind of level is augmentation, which is where you take a task and then you use technology to make it slightly better. So it's the same kind of task, but you're able to tweak it and change it using technology so that the outcomes are slightly stronger, but not necessarily different. Modification is where you look at the use of technology to give the task a different twist. You're able to do things that maybe you couldn't do so much before. You're able to use technology to include more people or to share more things. I don't want to share any examples because I know the guys are going to share some wonderful examples with you. And then finally, this idea of redefinition. So this idea that if we take technology and look at our learning practices, can we use technology and great pedagogical choices to totally redefine what we do? And Steve is going to give us some examples of that a little bit later on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop off the screen share, like so. And I'm going to now pass on to a wonderful colleague and friend of mine, Chris Mann. Yes, Kimberly, sorry.
Sorry, I've just opened the Q&A app, and apologies to everyone who's now +16. Michael Haar's suggestion that we couldn't actually see in the audience your screen. We could see Chris Mann for that entire time, apparently, for those watching at home. So as attractive as Chris is, and I'm sure he smiled the entire time, you just need to watch the camera, who the camera's on. Okay, so
that screen share didn't work then? That's what we're saying? So you guys could see it?
We could see it, but according to the many comments in our Q&A app, people can see your screen share.
Switch the cameras. Okay. Okay, cool. So if I'm just going to try that again so we make sure we get it right. So if I click on a screen share now, and I click there, can I just have someone in the Q&A app maybe tell me that they can see that screen now? That would be obviously beneficial. So can I just check that that's happening? The beauty of technology, obviously a great example of how to do it.
My favorite comment is that someone asked us to redefine the screen.
Brilliant. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to launch this on a different computer so I can double check that everything's working as well. Yes, Amanda has just said that we can now see it. So guys, I really do apologize for that. What I'm going to do is drop the slide deck into the event page anyway, so you will be able to look at the slides again. They were really funny, like GIFs and funny images on there, which I spent a long time finding, like this image of, you know, a child laughing, and unfortunately I have messed that up. So my deepest apologies for that. We're all learning. And what I'll do now is, Chris, I'll come off screen sharing, so if you can then jump in.
Not a problem. Okay, so I'm talking about the augmentation side of things with the SAMR model. For me, I'm going to be talking about how we've used Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets in our curriculum currently at school, at John Monash Science School, and then also how we have been using Google Classroom to deliver that content and some different templates and stuff to our students. So I'm going to jump straight into a screen share myself, and we'll just double check that that works. Okay. So there's someone in the Q&A can just let us know that's working before we get started. That would be ace.
Okay, I'm just having a look as well, Chris. So
yeah,
I'll tell you, we've just got a slight lag.
Chris Harte, I'm pretty sure you direct the camera as the instigator of the Hangout.
That's all good, Chris. So you're good to go.
Beautiful. Okay, so the first idea that I'm going to walk you guys through is the creation of a unit of inquiry through Google Docs, as well as an e-workbook for students to record their progress in when they're completing this unit of inquiry. We have a Year 10 Geography subject called Issue Studies at school, and one of the units of inquiry that we work with is an inquiry into the role of the United Nations in the world as an institute of global governance. So one of these ideas that we've used Google Docs to augment that sort of those learning outcomes for our students is creating a dynamic task list or task brief, I suppose. The culmination of this task is the students go away and they complete a whole stack of research and then present that in a video briefing where they are appealing to our current Foreign Minister, Julia Bishop, to intervene in an area of the world which needs humanitarian assistance or wherever there is a conflict going on. So the strengths of this is that we've got all the resources in one space for the students. They've got task 1, for example, and a link to different chapters of a textbook if they need. We also have dynamic links that we can change and update as websites change themselves to other areas of the internet. We've got the rubric there for them to come back to. Once again, something that is changing all the time at school is how we actually assess our students. But overall, the whole idea is that it actually gives them something that they can look at and refer back to throughout the entire task. They actually get their own copy of this through Google Classroom, and they can change the name of it as well, which is really fantastic. It means that students can submit work and we can give feedback almost instantaneously, as well as collaborate because it is online with Google. We've got guiding in there as well, and then this works really nicely in hand if we look at another unit of work where they can actually solely use it as an e-workbook. One of the other pieces of work that we use and do at John Monash is a sustainable urban design project called #Project 2060, with the idea that Melbourne in Victoria, Australia, will double its present population by the time it gets to 2060. The idea being that the students go out into the city for an entire day and gather some data and information on sustainable building practices, okay, and then they move into a annotation stage, exploring ideas of sustainable development and building the necessary skills that we would like them to build in geography. And once again, moving into very easy to schedule tasks when they're meant to be completed, students come back to and refer to the development and progression of the task itself. Then the students can actually move in and insert their data and information into the document itself, and that gives us real-time, instead of looking over a student's shoulder, we actually have access to the entire class's information and their work at the touch of a button, and gives us quite a good snapshot of where they're up to with the task. They then get to insert photos. It's not just photos from the internet, photos from them. So they're using the secondary device, iPad or iPhone or other mobile device, to actually take photos of them completing that work. And you just simply can't do that in some other, I suppose, technology in such a dynamic and easy to use way. So I suppose in this case we use Google Docs to quite a lot to share student work and also get them to collaborate quite easily. But we also use our Google Slides for quite a lot of collaboration, and quite easy collaboration as well. So I'm just going to share again this time around. So for me, for an environmental science teacher, I love getting the kids to create their own presentation and orally talk about the content and concepts that we've been working with or on during class. One of the recent topics that we've just finished up is the idea of biotic relationships, looking at the way that different organisms interact with each other. And one way that I found that students really enjoy talking about this topic is through a storybook, and we do that through Google Slides. So the students are each allocated a different type of relationship, such as mutualism or commensalism, and they're given a set of tasks to complete within 3 slides. So what is your allocated relationship and what does it mean, and so on. But the great thing about this is that you have more than 3 students working on the slides at once. They can each take ownership of a slide, and then they can actually go in and comment on each other's slide. The great thing about all of Google apps means that in the tools section up here, you can open up a nice little research bar, okay? And this will let you search Google images, videos, quotes, etc. And for example, if students are looking at mutualism, it's just as simple as typing the word in, and we're going to get some information. The internet doesn't break, which it looks like it might. That's all right. Okay. That just simply gives the students another area to present their information, which is really nice. Okay. Then we also have sheets, which I like to call sheets Excel with friends. It makes it quite a fun site to work with numbers and data. But even something as simple as creating a list of different ideas and sorting them into some really good ones and some really dodgy ones, but also coming up with an idea that you might be able to create into an actionable and realistic project. We use sheets for a task where we get the students to come up with 100 ideas in 10 minutes for our Learn 2 subject, and then sort through them and find the one that they'll follow through and hope to use to resolve an issue. So it's something like this, a how might where we've just got our columns, and how might we better reduce litter at John Monash Science School. We've got a whole stack of ideas, and we can go whether or not they're a terrible idea, whether we love them, whether they're doable, combinable, we combine a couple of them up together, and then it also lets us put in the one. So I've just added a couple of extra ones here. We could have the cafeteria make lunch for us. Well, that's not a terrible idea. I quite like that. Get students to take turns making lunch for the school. Well, that's not really going to happen. So it's a terrible idea. We kind of love this idea of a cafeteria. It's kind of doable, but we need to do some changes. And it could be combinable with the rest of the more varied recycle bins, teams and litter duty, and an information campaign. We've then got these little drop-down arrows, which we can sort through things, and this gives the students the ability to very easily just get rid of the ones that they don't like, or that they've decided are terrible, they love, and we're slowly getting down to the ones that are going to work for us. Okay, and that can let us move over to the one. So to introduce a new variety of recycling bins through information campaign led by teams who help out on litter duty. So just another way that students are able to sort through their information.
Chris?
Yes. Hello?
2-minute mark.
Sorry, thank you. Okay.
Right.
Just a way that are able to sort through their information in a different way. And this culminates, or can culminate, and we can use Google Classroom to push this information out to the students. So this is Google Classroom, and these are the classes that I currently teach. Got a couple of issue studies classes there. What we're going to go over to is environmental science. And one of the key learning outcomes that I've been working on recently is getting students to be reflective. Google Classroom allows us to create announcements, which can include things like extra resources, acknowledgement of student work. There could be a task that's coming up that needs to be completed, but it also lets us create assignments, okay? And using Google Docs, we can actually complete, or Google Slides or Sheets, we can create templates for our students. And I'm just going to show you very quickly how that can work. So I've got a student-assessed coursework number 5, which is a ecosystem research task. Okay. I've copied a, oops, that's not the right thing. The description can be reflective task for SAC. Can fix that later. And then we can set a due date, and we can just say, let's make that next Friday. Sorry. We can add a time as well. But then the brilliance of it is that I can go to my Google Drive and attach a template that can be sent out to all the students. So reflection questions that I've gone in and made previously, I can add. And I can then introduce that students can view the file, can edit the file, or make a copy for each student. And this means that they can turn it in, if I assign it, means that they can turn it in once they've completed the task. Whilst they have the copy, I can only make comments, but once they turn it in, I can then make edits and changes and give instant feedback. Okay, so if that pops up, I can actually show you what the document looks like. Okay, it'll also tell me how many students have completed them or not completed them. And the document will look something like this. That's going to take a while, the looks of things. Alright, we won't worry. But suffice to say that it actually means that students are more accountable for their work. They can actually see whether or not they've completed a task. And it also means that it's quite easy for you as a teacher to figure out who has completed the work and get those students to complete the work if they haven't. So they're just my basic ideas of how to incorporate Google Apps and deliver them through Google Classroom. And hopefully...
Thank you so much for the presentation so far. You do have a couple of questions that I would love you to answer, so if we can do those quite briefly. The question we're going to answer first is, I've just lost it now, this stream keeps exploding. Is the first one was Amanda has asked us about when students are using the stream in Classroom, do you find that kids are comfortable contributing to the stream? Is that
yeah, most definitely. I find that more often than not, students that have found talking out loud or talking in front of a large class, we actually have classes of 50 students at school. I find that giving them a virtual space to work in actually gets them involved a lot more, and also helps them build that digital literacy and navigation of an online world, which I think is obviously becoming more and more important. But no, I don't think they're definitely not shy, and as long as they modelled the right behaviour on those forums and those streams, you tend not to have too much disruptions and things like that.
Awesome, thank you. And then the next question is from Caitlin. And Caitlin asks, when you're using Google Sheets to input the data, I think that must be the filtering exercise, do you use a Google form with the questions, or do you ask the students to input the data straight into the sheet?
I've only used them to put them into the sheet. I haven't actually done a lot of work with Google Forms as yet. So yeah, but definitely I know that they both work hand in hand very well, and I know a lot of teachers at our school do a lot of marvelous things with them that make life very easy. But yeah, it wouldn't be too difficult to definitely use a form to input that data.
Awesome. Well, so thank you so much, Chris. We're going to move on in the in terms of time. That was wonderful. Thank you. We're going to move now to the wonderful Kimberly Hall, who I'm very excited to spend some time, even though it's only virtually, with. So, Kimberly, without any further ado, I shall let you get going.
Thank you. You're being too nice to me, Chris. Yeah, you are. All right, I'm going to try and share my screen successfully, hopefully. And hopefully, let me see. And hopefully you'll be able to see that as well. So, can you guys see my screen now? Excellent. All right, so I am going to talk about modification level, and as Chris talked about at the start, you know, SAMR has some challenges in that it doesn't actually teach us what to teach. It talks about different ways of integrating technology, but not necessarily how we should do that in terms of the pedagogy. So I like to think of modification as an opportunity for us to reimagine the teaching and learning cycle. So in my job, I'm really privileged to get to work with lots of different teachers and students all across Melbourne in different Catholic schools. And I have a background in teaching linguistics and social studies. So I thought that I would start talking about some of the ways that I have seen teachers and I myself have used some of these Google apps to do that, to reimagine different stages of the teaching and learning cycle. So I'm going to start by looking at some planning. So hopefully you can see my screen where I have a copy of a document that it's beautifully filled in for us already. I actually did this at the Sydney Google Summit, so thank you to anyone who happened to be in that session and now their name is appearing on the screen. And this is an activity that you know, is pretty much modelling exactly what we would do with kids. And I have lots of kids examples, but I'm not allowed to show all their names on YouTube, so that's why we're looking at adults examples. And what we're basically looking at is, Chris talked about using Google Docs at that augmentation level, and we're looking at some ways that now we can modify that. So rethinking the way that we do the planning stage in learning. So one of the things about planning that we often know with kids is that we give them some time to plan their work in whatever subject it is, and we always have that one kid in the class who guaranteed will sit there for most of the planning time staring at either their device or the piece of paper. And so one of the things that I've seen work really effectively is to create this really visible planning space for kids. So we've emulated this here with adults, and actually getting them to come into a Google Doc that has a table in it, and I'll explain why I have the table. Getting them to actually go through the different stages of their planning in a space that everybody can see everybody else's. Now there are some really obviously big advantages to this. And there are some challenges when people start modifying their tasks in this way. So one of the first things, and the reason that I would always encourage you to use a table when you do a task like this, so getting kids to collaborate in their planning, is it cuts down some of the mayhem. Because if any of you have ever got kids to go into a Google Doc and say, hey, find a line, and you know, I want you to add your name to a line and start sharing your ideas, it's complete chaos because they type over the top of each other. I had a grade 3 girl cry because someone started typing over the top of her other work, and we generally try to avoid making our kids cry in class. So anyway, when we have this sort of space where everybody is learning together, it creates this either pressure or probably more positively this intrinsic motivation for everyone to contribute. But because everybody is contributing, and you can see we've got all these contributions happening in here, it also means that it gives us the opportunity as teachers to create opportunities for the kids to connect, extend, and challenge one another in their thinking. And so Chris mentioned the use of comments in Google Docs, but sort of the next step of comments is what we refer to as mention comments. So I'm just going to demonstrate that, how you will do a mention comment and the use of it. So as a teacher, if I've got my kids planning together their writing in a doc like this, and I can see every kid's writing, I can see the connections and the challenges that exist between the students' ideas. So, you know, Lucy's got this idea here about creating books, and Anne-Marie's got this idea about personalising learning tasks through negotiation. And I might say, hey, you know, if these two paired up and had a little discussion around their ideas, they might actually benefit from that. So what I could do is I can highlight Anne-Marie's, for example. I can go up and I can add a comment. And rather than just adding a normal sort of comment, I can actually use the plus symbol, and I can type in any email address. I'll just spam myself rather than somebody else. And what this will actually do, if I write, you might like to collaborate with Lucy. I can never spell when I have people watching me type on this one. Okay, and when I have my plus symbol in front of this email address, what it'll actually do is it will send an email notification to whatever email address you have there, that they've been mentioned in a comment. They'll get an email notification and they can click on that notification and it will take them straight to this point in the document. So you're actually creating these really explicit connections between the kids, which can be really, really valuable and, you know, helps you be able to see all of their work at once rather than try to get round to, well, Chris just said he had 50 kids in his class, and I'm not sure that you could physically get around to all of those kids to see they're planning to do that sort of thing without this technology. One of the other things that we can do in this sort of space is that we can actually, it gives us the opportunity just to really look at some metacognition stuff. So the way that kids learn and the way that they write. I'm going to jump over to our presentation, and I hope you can now see the presentation because there's a better example of this in here. So something that's built into all of our core apps within the Google Suite is one of my favourite things, and it's revision history. So on any of your apps, if you're in Docs or Sheets or Slides, you can go up to File, and you can go down to see revision history. And you'll actually get to see every single change that's been made in that document from the beginning of time of that document. And so this can be really interesting for kids to reflect on this, to see how at different stages, so if they can click on any of these, so we'll jump back and we'll see at 509, I added stuff to this document, and it'll highlight it in green because I'm in green. I'll jump back here to the middle of the day and something that was happening in this document. So I can actually see the different process that I've gone through as a creator of this particular content and sort of get a bit of an understanding of the way my mind works. There's also, and I'm going to jump back over into this document, there's also this great ability that's built into Docs now where we can put ourselves into what's called suggesting mode. So in the top right-hand corner of your doc, you'll see that I'm in editing mode at the moment, but if I'm suggesting, this puts me into a mode where all of my changes are logged as suggestions. So a little bit like track changes for all the Microsoft fanboys out there who've used that. But what this does, if I go through, if I have given my kids feedback on their writing, and I'm actually wanting to see, well, how much did they actually reflect on their feedback and then use that feedback to better their work. So what I could do is I could get them to change to suggesting mode and then come back in, and all of the changes that they make will be tracked. So if then Michelle wants to add another sentence, this is my new sentence based on feedback from my amazing teacher. then I can see that all of this has been added. And you can see over here on the right-hand side, it comes up as a comment, as a suggestion. And then as the owner of the doc, I can actually either choose to accept or reject that particular suggestion. But as a teacher, I can come back in and I can see all of the different changes that my kids have actually made on their work based on the feedback. The final one that I want to show you, and it won't work particularly well here, I'm going to jump over to a new document, and I've linked to this one actually in our presentation. So on slide 13 of the presentation, I've linked to some of the things that I'm going to talk about now, which are some add-ons and some Chrome apps. So if I jump over into this document, I've actually added a Chrome extension which is called Draftback. And if any of you want to try adding this, just click on the image that I've taken for you here for Draftback, and you'll get a little web address that'll pop up below it, and it'll take you off directly to where you can install that for yourself. So I've already added it to Google Docs, and that means that it's available for me in every Google Doc from this point forward, so I only ever have to add it once. And this is my little reading record here. This is Steve Mouldey's reading record. He's been reading Goldilocks and been doing quite a good job of it. And I can see up here, because I've installed this Chrome extension Draftback, I can see that there's 118 revisions that have been made to this document. And what this enables me to do is if I click on this, it will actually create, from that revision history which I showed you before, a video of all of those changes, and I can play it back. Now, it may not work as a video because we might be killing the internet, but we'll just give it another 5 seconds, and then you'll just have to believe me that that's what it does. And it's really can be very, very powerful because you actually see the different steps that you take in writing. So I know myself that I'm not a very linear thinker at all. When I construct writing, I jump from one thing to the other, I copy and paste, and I move things around constantly. And this gives you a really interesting insight into the way that works. I'm not convinced that's going to work, so we'll just see if we can. Let's delete that. Okay, well, it may not work anyway. All right, so while I'm over here, I want to talk about one final thing that I can do in Google Docs, because this technology is enabling you to rethink the way I work. And one of the things that we know very, very well in education is that the better we know our students and the more data we have on our students, the better we're going to be able to assist them in their learning journey. And so any sort of assessment and data that we can capture on kids is great. So I just wanted to show you an example of a reading record. So we all know we need to track students' reading, particularly at the junior years of primary school. And that's a really labour-intensive job for a teacher to go around and sit with every kid and hear them read regularly. And so there's some really fantastic things that we can actually do using Google Docs that will enable us to do that in a different way. So the first thing I'm going to show you is actually an add-on, and I might just refresh my page because Draftback's still trying to do something.
Kimberly, that's your 2-minute mark, and you've still got a few questions that people want to ask you as well.
So you need me to finish in 1 minute?
Oh yeah, that'd be lovely.
Okay, all right, no worries. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here, and this is Steve Mouldey's reading record. And I can see here, if I jump down to any of these dates, so I've created a table of contents, which I don't have time to show you how I've done that just now, but you'll have to trust me, that's a really good one, look that one up. And so I can jump down to any date that Steve's doing his reading, and I would actually be able to see, if we use this process, how his reading progress was going. So he's reading the story Goldilocks in parts. And what Steve could do as my student is actually record himself reading, and he can do that using an add-on which is called Kaizena, and I've linked that off the presentation again. So I'm going to go to my add-ons menu. I've got a lot. We click on Kaizena and open this, and I'm hoping that this will allow me to do it, given that we're breaking the internet a little bit. And what Kaizena allows you to do is actually record voice comments. So, you know, the most literal interpretation of that as a teacher is to give verbal feedback to kids rather than written feedback using comments. But another way of thinking about using this is that the kids can actually record themselves, and it will be attached to the particular document. So in this case, if I can get it to work, what I would actually do, here we go, so I'm going to be, we're just going to click on that for now. We'll see if this enables me to go. Come on. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to highlight the chunk of reading that is for that particular date. So if I went down to while that's loading, I don't have today's dates, we'll just have to go for the 13th of May. And I would highlight this text and then actually record myself reading. Okay, great. Go. And this is, and then I'll stop talking, Chris, I promise. I highlight this text here. I would click on New Feedback. And it will actually give me the ability now to record myself reading this. So I would say, Goldilocks got up and climbed the stairs of the bed, and there's just a one bed, blah, 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 blah. I've read that. As a teacher, I'd be able to play this back once I've stopped that, potentially. And then as a teacher, I would do this journal of a child's reading progress. Obviously, there are lots and lots of other applications for that, and there are some other really cool things to check out that I've linked off the presentation, but I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to stop talking now. I know, Chris Harte.
Yes, you are. But thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. Just so that you guys are aware, we are running another Google webinar on the 17th of June, and we would love suggestions from you about what else you would like to know about. We're deliberately just giving you a very, very quick overview of some different tools today and some different ideas. And I'm going to, there are a couple of questions for Kimberly, which if you can answer these pretty briefly, mate, that'd be awesome. The first one was around, actually no, Sarah, your question about the actual SAMR model we'll pick up at the end, if we can. That's good. The slides are linked on the Google event page, the Google Plus event page, so please go there. I've now lost your question. Okay, so Kimberly, this is from Carmel. She said it's an interesting one, and my question, reference mention comments is really, does anyone find that kids are using their email very much? I'm finding that even though we are full swing Google Apps, the Gmail component is not very attractive to students, young people, not immediate enough. That is it. Do you have it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point. I had another teacher tell me that recently as well, that you know, email is so, you know, 2000, and the kids it's not instantaneous enough for them at all. I guess, you know, that we need to, as teachers, adapt to that, and you know, there is the feature within Google Docs for the chat as well, for the real-time connection between kids. But in this case, obviously, the only way to emulate the mention comments would be for them to actually be using their Gmail. So if they're not doing that, then potentially it may not be as useful for you. You might just need to set up some practices in your classroom that the kids actually stop, you know, 10 minutes into the work process, stop and actually ask them to, you know, read the comments and read each other's work and ideas, and provide critique on that.
Just on the back of that, Jane Ellum tells us that suggestions is an awesome tool for formative feedback before it becomes summative, which I think is a really good point. And also, we've got Kelly Moore, who says she loves the way that she loves to mention what a great way to use comments, refines how we comment on work, which is really nice as well. Again, there are a couple of people asking about the presentation. You do have access to it, and I know that when Kimberly was doing the bit on Kaizen and recording it, it kind of chopped up a little bit the sound, but that app is called Kaizen, and Kimberly has linked that into her slides on the presentation. Could you use Kaizen to add voice to slides? That I do not know. Kimberly, do you know that?
As Camilla asked that, didn't she? Sadly, not at this point yet. I don't think, Camilla, but you know, I'm very open to being proven incorrect if somebody out there knows that you can.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. We might well come back to you in the conclusion if there are some more questions from people. Can I say thank you to everyone for keeping with us so far? We've got one more presenter to talk to us, but just a reminder that obviously this video is being archived into YouTube, so you'll be able to come back and watch it as many times as you like. Also, that we will be sending out a certificate for everybody who registered. So if you have just come across the actual Google Plus page and you haven't registered, there is a link on the Google Plus page for you to register, so we can capture your email address and we can share out information of further webinars if you want us to. And also, I just want to do, in case I forget to do now, just to thank the three presenters, Chris, Kimberly, and Steve, because they've given up their own time to prepare this material, to share what they're doing. And even though you guys are doing this PD, in possibly a redefined way if we talk about the SAMR model of being online and keep people connected from around the world. I think we've got Hong Kong, Australia, and New Zealand. New Zealand? Is that a real place? And we've also got people in India, we've got someone in the States and in Europe. But yes, apparently New Zealand is a real place. So we are in fact going to cut across to New Zealand and see a wonderful man who I met a couple of years ago at a thinking conference in Wellington, and who since then has developed and worked in an incredible school, redefining what pedagogy really is and how they use technology and pedagogy. And had the pleasure of spending some time with him at the Google Teacher Academy in Sydney again this year. So I'm going to cut across now to Steve Mouldey from Hobsonville Point School in Auckland. Steve, are you there?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. Actually, one of my favourite geography tasks that I've ever come across was a teacher from the UK, Dan Raven-Ellison, who does a lot of guerrilla geography stuff, who actually set his kids the task to prove to him that New Zealand did exist.
I believe you. I have been there. I'm going to mute, mate, and let you get on.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, Hobsonville Point Secondary School. We are a fairly new school. We have been open for about 1.5 years now, and I started there 2 years ago and had the amazing job of spending 6 months to create a school from scratch. And on our first couple of days there, the senior leadership had been there for 6 months together, and they basically said, welcome, we want you to stop, we want you to think, we want you to unschool yourselves. And basically they said that means to take time to read, to explore different ideas, and when you are actually ready, basically what we're going to do is we're setting you the task to redesign secondary schooling. Sounds awesome, also sounds rather scary. And for us, and my role within it was around curriculum and learning design. And so that picture on the slide there is me in my happy place, captured by Sally Harte. My team that I was involved in spent weeks tearing apart the New Zealand curriculum, exploding it onto post-its, filling up a breakout space like a little room, walls covered in post-its, covered in brainstorms, all different ideas, and then starting to piece it back together again to see what a curriculum could look like for us. And so part of the things that we worked on, what that photo is there, is what are the kind of threshold concepts and the key skills and things that each learning area needs to focus on, and we looked at what the connections across that were, and that's become a really important part of how our learning occurs. Another part of that looked at the how learning actually occurs, and that ended up with this learning design model, which for us looks at how it occurs across all aspects. Yes, in your normal classes, but also in projects that you're doing outside and possibly even away from school. It's quite similar to lots of different inquiry and design thinking processes that are out there in the world. But the power of it for us is that this has all come from the New Zealand curriculum. Within that whole model that you see there, there's one word in there that wasn't in the New Zealand curriculum, and that was ideate. And basically for us, that was a really important word about that generating ideas that sort of wasn't really in common usage in 2007 when our new curriculum was set. There is another layer outside of that again with some of the different things that might be about, such as, so if you're sort of exploring, you might be observing different perspectives and so on. All of that led to us looking at the different structures for how our school could operate. And first of all, hubs for us are really important. They are an advisory system. Some of you would have heard of the big picture schools in the States. So that's one teacher to up to 15 students. At the moment, we're operating at about 1 to 12 students. And we meet with them like a form class. You sort of have a check-in in the morning, but we actually have sort of 4.5 hours with them a week, where we do a lot of different work around sort of learning goals, sort of well-being and some of the health curriculum in that as well, but also sort of my communities and the ways that we can interact in our communities a bit better. Modules for us are probably the closest to traditional classes, but the ones that we call modules are actually co-taught, so it's like Chris was talking about, sort of classes of sort of around 50 students, you've got 2 teachers working with them, and for us they are from 2 different learning areas. So this term I've been co-teaching with some maths and science teachers. In the second half of the year, we've just gone through this week creating our partnerships, and for me, I'm going to be working with a food tech teacher on one module, a science teacher on one, and an English teacher on a different module. And spins that happen as well are just the one learning area, but they take up much less of the timetable than the co-taught. We really want to work on those kind of natural connections to amplify the learning. Big projects, 3 hours on a Wednesday, where the kids are taking on projects, sort of service learning type ideas, where you're pairing up with partners in the community to work on a project that's going to benefit both the community but also student learning. My time is a flexi time area that we've got built in during the day, and our version of staff briefing is called Kitchen Table, and basically what that's about is there's absolutely no admin allowed, so it's a real PD focus to it. I guess what we're aiming at trying to do throughout all of this is sort of amplify what's happening for our learner, and we've put that at the centre of it all. It's about coherence, it's about agency, about them sort of really getting what that connection is about. So the best example that I can give of how this all comes together for them and using the tech is through the Lunar Narrative. This is an actual student's narrative. I've just gone through and taken out their name throughout it, and at places where they have mentioned other students' names, I've taken them out as well. You'll see at the very top it's got their goals that they've set with their hub coach. Then when you come through, it's a regular reflection on how their learning is occurring. That's based on their perspective, but also from the feedback that they're getting from teachers within their classes. So you'll see SLM1, so that's a small module, and you'll see the teachers, you'll see the learning areas involved in that, you can see their reflections as they go, but you'll also see that what they're doing is linking in the evidence to prove what they're trying to say. If you keep scrolling down, and there you go, you'll find me, which is why I chose her one, because I knew that there was some of this in there, that as well as kind of reflecting on how it's going. If you see within this area here, week 7 towards the end of term 1, where she was talking about where she actually was. So she was comparing at the rubric, and basically, sort of that self-assessment that Hattie has said is, so important for students. As well as the modules, they're doing this for their spins, for their their specific areas. So she's sort of doing a dance one, there's a languages that she's doing by correspondence, a maths, and so you're sort of getting that same thing throughout it all. But as well as those actual modules, they're also doing this for what it is that they're doing in their hubs, and their big projects, and their my times, and so you're getting that real connection for them across it all. And I guess that's the really important part of all of this. We're doing all those things that you've seen already. You've sort of students continually working on Google Docs in classes. We're using forms for giving feedback on things, forms for timetabling, but basically sort of the way that the technology really changes things for us is that it really underpins the connections between all those different areas to make those real amplifications of the student learning. And as I scroll further down, we also get to the parts where within this document, though, as well as sort of reflecting on their learning, they're also looking at what they're doing with their learning dispositions, which is a major part of our hub curriculum. And as we get further down, you also see sort of the regular check-ins that you get between the student and coach. And basically what happens is they sit down, they talk about how that learning is going for them in the last couple of weeks, they get some notes together, set some short-term goals, and then share that home with parents. So as well as the connections between the learning areas, we're talking about the connections between sort of home and school. And for us, the phrase that we use around that is powerful partnerships. And that is what I had prepared for us tonight.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that, Steve. Just to, I know you obviously want to be concentrating on the Q&A things, but Amanda made me laugh because Amanda Radlin says, Steve, can I come and work at your school? Which has to be an awesome compliment to get. So thanks for that, Amanda. There are a couple of questions if you're happy to answer them, and then we'll pick up let's have a look. And then we'll pick up the what do you call it? The other questions about SAMR at the end. So let's have a quick look down here. For your question, Steve, it was hang on, sorry. I'm losing my questions. Yeah, just Amanda again, actually. So wondering what advice you would give to more traditional schools wanting to transition to an environment more like your school.
If you're talking about the connection between learning areas, a previous school that I worked at started doing this. We based it around a form class where we had the science, maths, English and social studies teachers sort of meeting together and actually starting to coordinate what we were doing within each term. So rather than having it all set up at the start like we have here, in my previous school we sort of went through that process. Right, for these form classes, let's sit down and work out what we're doing together, how we can actually work closer together. As a social studies teacher, we always do things, sort of like how people can respond to disasters and that side of it. And then in a completely different term, you've got the science teachers teaching about earthquakes and tectonic plates. Well, doesn't it make sense to actually have that happening at the same time? So that's one way around it. If you're talking about physical environment, some of the best examples that I've seen of people using sort of breakout spaces and that side of things actually comes from a school in Christchurch, Breen's Intermediate, where they had 4 of your traditional classrooms that basically they'd set up one as the basically mountaintop where everyone came together to kind of hear all the big information. One of the rooms was the silent cave space. One room was for group work, and so they just had their the teachers working together to change those spaces up that way. It's about what you're doing in it. It's not the the
awesome. Thank you. Thanks for that. And just Jane's comment is Jane Ellum says that rubrics are so essential for learning. We set up Google Docs and sheet rubrics where students get to fill in the tasks that will reflect the skills required. Full-on negotiated learning where they have a buy-in. So go GAFE, which is wonderful. Thanks so much for that, Steve. So okay, we're coming to very quickly, unbelievably quickly, to the end of our evening together. Andrew Layton, thank you so much for a lovely comment. What great professional learning to finish off the day. Lots of stimulating possibilities to share with my colleagues at my school. The way we wanted to blend this webinar is to have examples from Chris and Kimberly, which were very, very focused and specific and quick, and you could implement them tomorrow. So you get this idea of there is so much we can do with Google Apps for Education and technology in general to help to improve learning for students and teaching for I suppose teaching for teachers, but also we wanted somebody like Steve to come in and really spend a little bit of time going into that depth of, we keep talking about what next practice is, and we can improve our current practice with technology undoubtedly, but what is that real game-changing, transformational redefining of what learning and teaching really is, and what is the role of technology in that? So even though Steve's in a sense, I hope you don't mind me saying this, Steve, the use of the Google Doc as a learning portfolio or a learning narrative, which I really love that term, was a really simple kind of use of technology, but incredibly powerful for redefining the way learning happens and the way, the pedagogy and the choices around learning. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I am going to pick up a couple of questions, and if any of you guys, so Kimberly, Steve, or Chris, if you feel you want to chime in, please do. I'll just give you a couple of comments first. Marissa picks up on this idea about using Google Mail or Gmail. She said it would become common practice when using Google Apps for Education. Children will respond accordingly when the teachers respond to their work, which is great. Thank you for that, Marissa.
I don't know, sorry, Chris, to interrupt. Did you see Monica's comment? Thank you, Monica, for testing it. And yeah, if you use the kaizena.com website, you can create yourself your own profile there, and it is allowing you to leave voice comments on slides. The Kaizena website actually has a whole lot of other really awesome things, including being able to set up a profile where you can ask specific people for feedback. So you could actually connect across the school and have students seeking feedback from students in other classes and other teachers and things like that. But that's a bit more than what we've covered today.
Yeah. So Kimberly, this one was also for you, and the answer is yes. The quick answer is, when you were talking about having mention comments, it said, could you add Lucy as well, and then will it email both students that they should be collaborating together? And the answer to that one is indeed it will, which is awesome. So I just want to pick up, just to kind of let us bring everything back together, can I say thank you to Jane and to Michael, who have shared some links, and actually a couple of other people have shared links as well around this SAMR model. But Sarah Anderson, the delightful Sarah Anderson, asks a couple of questions, and this one in particular is, can you please comment on situations where substitution is appropriate? Google, i.e. Google Maps and the use of an atlas. Is the SAMR model always viewed as a hierarchy with redefinition being best practice? So when we started off this webinar, I think one of the things which I didn't show you because I didn't share my slides at all very well was this idea that although it looks like a hierarchy, indeed the important thing for us, I think from our perspective, is it's an interesting way to look at technology and learning. It's not a way to judge what people do. It's not a way to say, oh, you're wonderful, you're redefining, you're rubbish, all you're doing is substituting one technology for another. That's not the point of it. The point, I think, and again, it's only my interpretation, the point is that we can use technology to make learning better for students. Sometimes that is using a technology which could be substituted for multiple other technologies. The point being is that if your pedagogical purpose, if your outcome that you want to achieve is strong, and the pedagogical activity you've chosen to achieve it is strong, irrespective of the technology, learning will happen. So if it's post-it notes and butcher's paper, wonderful. If it's using something like, and I really like Sarah's example of, what's the difference between using an atlas and using Google Maps. I would argue that if you want to inspire people to look at the world and inspire awe and wonder in students, show them an atlas. Look at what the feel, turn the pages and engage with that atlas. Equally, you could do that with Google Maps, if that is your outcome. If your outcome is you want to measure the perimeter of Australia, then you can do that really easily in Google Maps. Probably, yeah, I suppose you could do it with a ruler as well, but you can actually measure it in real scale using Google Maps as opposed to saying it's 17 centimeters in perimeter. So I suppose the question is, what do you want to achieve pedagogically beyond just saying whether the technology is redefining, or it's really about that pedagogical purpose first, I think. Guys, any of you guys want to jump in on that?
No, I was just thinking, sorry, Steve, were you going to say something? There's another comment as well, which sort of links into it as well. Jane asked, and I think this is probably directed based on Steve's presentation, but what recommendations do you have for teachers trying to engage with redefinition when they're often daunted by the prospect? And I think there's actually some through lines from both those questions, that this concept that, one of Google's guiding principles is think big but start small. And I think that really applies to the use of technology as well and the way that we use it. So we might have these grand ambitions for completely redefining our learning spaces. But starting by getting your staff in your school or the kids in your classroom feeling comfortable with using technology as part of the learning process, not as an add-on to the learning process, is the first place to start and the best place to start. And then dream big and take little steps towards there.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Kimberly.
I was just
okay. Yeah, sorry, Chris.
I was going to say in relation to the value of maybe substitution is that engagement, that initial engagement with a topic, and maybe Google Maps, just that element of exploration with a computer is really fantastic, that I think kids really get, and sometimes maybe that's not as tangible compared to flicking through an atlas, but I think that level of engagement you can get off the bat with something like Google Maps, where they can actually spin around the globe and look at where they live, is really well valued.
Awesome, thank you very much for that, Chris. So it is now 8:05 p.m. in Australia, and I'm really hungry. I don't know about anyone else. So not having had any dinner yet, we're going to finish up. Just a couple of thoughts and questions here. Robin McAllister asks, can future webinars have a focus on the middle of a primary school as well as the secondary settings? We kind of volunteer to do these webinars, and we use the networks that we know to get people that we know to come together, and I appreciate that. Although I think a lot of the things which have been demonstrated can be applicable to middle and primary, and even potentially lower primary years. I do appreciate that. We are all secondary. Although I used to teach French in primary schools. We also, webinars are not the only place for professional learning around Google Apps for Education. Please join your local Google Educator group. If it's Melbourne, we've got over 1,000 members now. I don't know how New Zealand's doing really well as well. They've got how many's in there?
We've cracked 1,000 just recently as well.
Wonderful. And connect with those people who are more like you, so in primary school or in languages teaching or in whatever it might be, and connect with those people. That's a great place to start. And also, as Kimberly mentioned before, the Google Apps for Education Summits, which EdTech team run, and Kimberly and her team, Jim and Chris and Wes, do a great job, and Chris, the other Chris, there's lots of Chris's, do a great job in Australia and sort of the APAC area of running some Google EdTech team Google Apps Summits. So certainly get involved in those. And basically, I think the biggest thing is to connect with other people who have stayed up until 8 o'clock watching this webinar, and who you can actually see in the event screen. Connect with them on Google+. Start asking questions. Start building that learning community. So it just remains for me to say a massive thank you to Chris Mann, to Kimberly Hall, and to Steve Mouldey for giving up their time and their energy to present for us tonight. It's been really wonderful. Guys who have registered, you'll receive a certificate of registration, so you can pass that on to your school and say, listen, I stayed up until 8 p.m. Involved in professional learning, which is wonderful.
10 p.m. in New Zealand.
It's 10 p.m. in New Zealand. In other places in the world, it's a different time. It's really late. In
Geography.
I'm in bed by 8 p.m. So you will get a link, and we will also send you out a link to our next webinar. But before we do that, we'll send out a poll asking for your feedback on what you would like more of. Is it tools? Is it stories? Is it a combination of those things? And we'll do our best to provide that for you. So it just remains for me to say good night. Stay safe. Look after yourselves, and yeah, keep on keeping on. Goodbye.